Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net thrown into the sea, which collects fish of every kind. When it is full, they haul it ashore and sit down to put what is good into buckets. What is bad they throw away. Thus it will be at the end of the age. The angels will go out and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Do you understand all these things?" They answered, "Yes." And he replied, "Then every scribe who has been instructed in the kingdom of heaven is like the head of a household, who brings from his storeroom both the new and the old." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The kingdom of heaven is like. I want to stop here. I don't want to go ahead. Remember a couple of months ago, then Deacon Michael preached a homily on how God loved so much the world that he gave. Today I want to do something similar. The kingdom of heaven is like. 4 times in today's gospel, Jesus says that sentence. The kingdom of heaven is like. He gives us 4 images in today's gospel. But throughout the Gospels, we find more images of what the kingdom of heaven is like. They are activities, human activities like buying and selling, like fishing. I must confess, I've never fished. I don't know. I've never fished. But many of you do and enjoy that. Okay? How about when doing those things? If you just go back to this image that Jesus gave us and reflect on what you're doing and how you're doing it, and try to see the logic of the kingdom of heaven throughout those activities that we each do. Again, maybe fishing is not so common, but buying and selling, yes. And Jesus speaks a lot here about joy and about giving everything. It's so worth it. You know, yesterday I had an image of that, an epiphany, if you wish, of that. As I was celebrating the wedding of a couple, I knew the bride, and I was asked to be the backup in case the priest they scheduled their wedding with was not able to celebrate, and Father Dennis was ill with cancer. We didn't know how long he will be with us, and of course he didn't make it, and so I was celebrating this wedding, and it's the second wedding of the pandemic that I am celebrating. And Damian and Kayla were the Mass, the 9 o'clock Mass today. Daniel read the readings at Mass. When I see these young couples, what I see this logic of the kingdom of heaven. Giving everything because it's all worth it. You know, these weddings are occurring with heavy restrictions. Back in May, they were much more restricted than now. But still, we celebrated Mass with a limited number of guests, with masks on the faces, except for the bride and groom. With social distancing. The wedding reception took place in a hotel parking lot. And you know what? It was okay. It's not as we imagine weddings, but you know what? It's worth it. Kayla and Daniel, back in May, when we were wondering what do we do? Do we go ahead? Do we not go ahead? They said, Father, we want to get married. That's all we want. It doesn't matter if we have 10 people, we have 20, 30, it doesn't matter. It's worth it. It's like that fine pearl that Jesus speaks about. We saw last month, we assisted at a priest ordination virtually. And again, this image of the pearl of great price came to mind, or the treasure buried in the field, where one finds it, goes and sells it, and it's worth it, because it's worth all our life. And that's what the kingdom of heaven is like. I invite you this week, as you go about your daily routine, ordinary or extraordinary situations, to remember these words of Jesus. The kingdom of heaven is like. And to try to fill in the blanks with your activity, with your life. To fill in the blanks. What is the kingdom of heaven like? If these things, or these persons, these activities are so important to me that I don't look at the cost, right? That they matter so much to me. How is the kingdom of heaven like? How is God like? Right? The kingdom of heaven is not just a figure of speech. The kingdom of heaven is really, ultimately, a person. It's Jesus. That is the kingdom of heaven. He is the kingdom of heaven. Come down on earth to encounter us, to catch us, if you will, like in a net. The kingdom of heaven is like. We heard in the first reading King Solomon praying this beautiful prayer for wisdom. Of all the things that God offered him, he asked only one: to have an understanding heart. I invite you to pray with me this week, to have an understanding heart. A heart that is piercing through the daily occurrence of life, through the daily happenings of life, even the most mundane things we do, and to see the kingdom of heaven at work. Because the kingdom of heaven is at work, pandemic or not. Doesn't matter whether it's the year of the Lord 0 or 2000 or 3000. Doesn't matter what language you speak. Doesn't matter your race. Doesn't matter what part of the earth you live in. Doesn't matter what your job is. Doesn't matter what state of life you are in. Doesn't matter whether you're sick or healthy, whether you're in a good place or in a bad place. The kingdom of heaven is at work. If we only have eyes to see. Jesus says in his gospel, do you understand all these things? It's a rhetorical question. He wants us to realize how important it is what he's saying, everything he's saying. Do you understand? And he says, then every scribe who has been instructed in the kingdom of heaven is like the head of a household who brings from his storeroom both the new and the old. brings everything that is useful for this purpose, evaluates, discerns, just like King Solomon, to distinguish the good from the bad, brings the good, the old and the new. The kingdom of heaven is like. St. Paul teaches us in the second reading, and this is one of my preferred verses that has served me well in life, and I bet it will until the end of my days. We know that all things work for good for those who love God. All things work for good. So let us welcome all things in the spirit of discernment of this head of the household in Jesus' spirit, and see the kingdom of heaven at work.